Senior Congress politician and a very, very keen cricket observer, one who watches cricket religiously, Dr. Shashi Tharoor. Dr. Tharoor, your views on what I call a remarkable and spectacular win.
Well, I think you've said it, remarkable, spectacular. Look, frankly, this morning I never really thought we could pull it off. I mean, I assumed that the only two likely results were either a defeat or a draw. It just seemed to me so impossible. And in fact, with all the ominous forecasts for rain, I was actually expecting the spoiler to be the weather, and that would be the end of that. Instead, we got one of the most enthralling last days of Test cricket ever. And right to the last few minutes, anything was possible. If Rishabh had somehow got out, we had three tailenders who couldn't bat to save their lives. I mean, we could have ended up in a tie, in a defeat, in anything. That kind of excitement Test cricket only can provide. And I have to say that it was just the most amazing, amazing result. And I think a vindication of the kind of bench strength that India has developed in recent years. When you think of the number of injuries this team went through, and they couldn't even fly in the sort of healed replacement like Ishant Sharma because of the quarantine requirements thanks to COVID. So they had to pick from within the squad they took there. And then to find winners and mold them as Ajinkya Rahane did into a winning team. All of this, I think, just speaks so wonderfully of where Indian cricket is today.
Let me ask you another question. My question number 2. If I were to borrow from the political lexicon, would you say that this was truly a case where the team found Apda mein Avsar? You know, your views on this young, phenomenal, well-achieving team?
Oh, yeah. And in fact, not just the youngsters, people like Natarajan, 29 years old, is not young in cricket. And he would never have thought that he would be even playing for India in any format, let alone in all three at the end of a tour, for which he was initially picked as a replacement bowler. You may remember that he wasn't in the original squad. It was Varun Chakravarti, the mysterious leg spinner, who had got the call. Then he dropped out. And suddenly Natarajan, who had bowled well in IPL, was brought in, but everyone thought at best he'll be practicing in the nets. If he's very lucky, he'll get a T20 match. Moving human interest stories like Natarajan's and Mohammad Siraj's. I mean, look at both Natarajan coming from really dirt poor poverty in a village hundreds of kilometers away from the state capital, essentially making his name by plying the Tamil Nadu leagues, making a late debut for Tamil Nadu, being discovered by the IPL, playing in the IPL, and then finally this. Siraj, his father's a rickshaw driver and not a very well man. The family again living in desperate poverty. It is Siraj's cricket and his earnings that enabled him to actually have a decent home for his father to stop pulling a rickshaw. Then his father dies at the beginning of the tour. What heartbreak. And the son decides he will not even go back for his beloved father's funeral because his father's dream was Desh ko shaan kar do, you know, come and play somehow for the country and bring glory to it. So he stayed on missing his father's funeral, even though he was not a certainty for the side and even though he wasn't picked for the first test. And look, second, third and fourth, he becomes the highest wicket taker for India. And he is the one whose tears have moved the nation twice.
They have.
Once when the national anthem was played and once when he got his 5-4 in a test match. I mean, these are stories of human interest that also speak about a real new India, not the new India the politicians talk about, but the new India that cricket has brought into our lives. A new India of aspiration, of hope, where people from humble backgrounds and unknown places in small towns and villages are transforming this nation. It started perhaps with Dhoni and that lot, and from then onwards it's reached the fairy tale stories of Mohammad Siraj and Team.
Oh, definitely.
I think there's so much in this news today to relish in and to glory in for Indians. There's a lot to celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot to celebrate. And this is nothing short of a fairy tale story. But tell you what, Dr. Tharoor, it is not a fairy tale for the Australians. I remember reading your tweets of all the commentary that was done by the Australians. They'd almost written this team off. Many in India had also written this team off. A word, perhaps, for the Australians who maybe spoke too soon.
I did. I'm just saying that, it's not right to have what the Germans call Schadenfreude or the few English wonks call epicaricacy, which is the malicious pleasure of enjoying other people's misfortune. We don't like to do that. It doesn't seem decent, right? And when other people are suffering, you have to commiserate. But all these confident, smug predictions by Australian commentators, former test players, so-called experts, and a couple of Englishmen too in that list, like Michael Vaughan, all saying that 4-0 is going to be the result after India were humiliated in that 38 all-out drubbing in the fourth innings of the Adelaide Test. We lost within 3 days.
36.
Frankly, we're pretty bad travelers. We always seem to do badly in the first test of an away series. It happened in South Africa, happened in England, it happened again this time in Australia. But the way that we picked up and fought back shows so much about the spirit of the side. And credit, first of all, to Ajinkya Rahane. He is quiet, he's understated, but he shows a certain kind of leadership, Saket, that honestly, to my mind, our country needs more of. Not just in the sports field. Quiet, understated, a man who doesn't need to assert his authority, thump his chest, scream at the players. You never see him raising his voice, calm and unflappable. And what is more, giving credit to his team. It was so moving to see when he was given the Victor's Trophy at the end of the series, he promptly handed it over to the most junior member, Natarajan, to hold. That is true leadership. When you make your team stakeholders in your success and you make them co-owners of your greatest triumphs. So, first of all, my tribute to Ajinkya Rahane. Second, behind the scenes, people like Ravi Shastri, the coach, the overall sort of grand panjandrum of the team. He must have been calling the shots. We never see this out in the public, but he's called the right shots. Bharat Arun, who as a test cricketer briefly was called Bharti Arun because Bharti, as in Subramanya Bharti, I mean, it's a male name, but since the Indian media kept getting confused about his gender, he dropped the I and became Bharat Arun. Look at Bharat Arun. I mean, he's been such an inspirational figure. And he's the one who discovered players like Siraj and Natarajan and brought them up to where they are. So we're looking at an extraordinary team effort. And I think that is something, again, that we in India in every walk of life need to learn from. We are a team. We are one. We have to pull together. There should be no weak links. It is difficult to find a weak link in this 11, right? I tweeted because I ran out of space the names of 7 players. But even the other 4 deserve a mention. Mayank Agarwal's 38 in the first innings deserves a mention. Rohit's 45 deserves a mention, but there simply wasn't enough room in the Twitter characters. All I can say is every one of the 11 more than pulled their weight, and as a result, it is truly a victory for Team India. Pant was magnificent. He was a fairy tale story, all of that, but in a sense, the men of the match were all 11 of the Indian team.
Absolutely. Dr. Tharoor, but before we let you go, can you put the Tharoorosaurus to good use and give us a nice English word for this win?
Well, I used it, epicaricacy, which is this really enjoying the misfortunes of the poor Australians, and all those pundits who said we were going to lose is from Tharoorosaurus as well. I think for the rest, I'll give you a word that's not in Tharoorosaurus, which is quite simply, wow. What can you say when the impossible or the improbable actually happens? And that's what happened today. None of us woke up in the morning expecting it. When Rohit was out, that really, I was convinced that was over. Now it's only draw and defeat. And look where we ended up. I don't think any Indian cricket fan is going to stop savoring this moment for a very long time to come.
Absolutely, Dr. Tharoor, we will. But, as someone who considers myself slightly unlettered in front of your Tharoorosaurus, and I'm assuming a lot of you must also be wondering what epicaricacy means. So let's thank you very much, Dr. Tharoor. Let's quickly put on the screen the meaning of this word. This is from Tharoorosaurus, which means that people who derive pleasure from the misfortune of another person or another situation. So it's like it's a Tharoor version of being sadistic. So that is the word from Tharoorosaurus for this moment. But in the larger context, Shashi Tharoor says the word he wants to use for India's win is wow. And that truly is the best way to define what has happened today. This is a great moment, not just for Indians to celebrate, but for anyone who loves the game of cricket to celebrate. Thank you very much, Dr. Tharoor.